Hey, what's up everybody? Ghost in a Pond here. I'm working on my Land Cruiser 100 series today. This is a 2001 Land Cruiser with the 4.7 liter V8, and I'm having some issues with charging. So I bought a new battery and got it fully charged. Cranks the car just fine. I've got full cranking amperage, but I drove the car for about 45 minutes the other day, stop and go traffic, had the AC on, had the radio on, and then the car lost power, started to stall. My dash light started flashing, the radio started cycling on and off, full loss of power. Luckily I had just gotten off the interstate, so I was able to pull over, had a friend bring some jumper cables, and we charged the battery for about 30 minutes with their car, and then I was able to get safely home. So I did some battery tests with a voltmeter and found out that the alternator is not charging when the vehicle is running. I've got a steady like 12.5, 12.6 volts from the battery. Then when you turn the car on, it cranks up just fine. You turn the radio on, turn the AC on, turn the headlights on, create some draw in the system. The voltage drops down to 11 or so when I create some draw on the system. So I think that my alternator is bad, so I bought a remanufactured Denso alternator from Napa. Just picked that up earlier today, and now I'm trying to replace this alternator. So I just wanted to show you what to expect and kind of talk about the process here. If you have a 4.7 liter Sequoia or Tundra, the process is going to be very similar. I took off my airbox because the Land Cruiser airbox has a big rectangular piece right here that blocks your view to the alternator, which is down here where I'm pointing. I hope you can see that. And then goes back over here. So I took off the engine dust cover with just 4 bolts, 10 millimeter bolt here, 10 millimeter nut here, 10 millimeter nut here. Then the airbox, 10 millimeter bolt here, 10 millimeter bolt here. Disconnect this hose, disconnect this hose, disconnect this hose, disconnect this hose. Phillips head or 10 millimeter, I don't know what you call it, but it's a hose clamp of some sort that holds the airbox in, and 10 millimeter or Phillips head right here. Undo both of those, and then you can wiggle the ends here and remove the whole airbox. That'll give you access to this part of the engine where you need to work. You've got your dynamic tensioner right here, which I hope you can see that with the lighting. Maybe from this side, I'm pointing at it right here. This thing, you put a 14 millimeter ratchet or wrench on the end here, and then you turn it counterclockwise and it releases tension on the serpentine belt here. And when you relieve tension off the serpentine belt, you can pull it off of the power steering and the alternator, and then release tension on the dynamic tensioner, or just let go of the socket or the wrench. Now I did have issues with that. I actually had to put a little square piece right here where my finger is. Again, hopefully you can see that. When the dynamic tensioner opened up, this creates a gap right here. And so then I had to put something right here to hold it while I slid my wrench off, because I needed my wrench for some of the 14 millimeters on the alternator, you can see there. And then the other thing that I had to do so far was remove, there's a dust shield right here that covers this whole area, fender liner. And it's just little plastic clips. Let's see if I can find one for you. Well, I just launched it. Looks like that. I just use a little clip puller like this, little cheapo Amazon clip puller to pop those off. There's 1, 2, 3, wait, 1, 2, I think there's one in the corner, one up here, and one up here. And then when you do that, I can slide up here into the fender well, and then I can kind of see the alternator and the power steering pump. I also had to remove the skid plate, which is 12 millimeter bolts, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. There is 3 in the front, 1, 2, 3, 2 back here somewhere. There goes one right here and one on the other side, and then right here on each side. Remove that, and then you can lower the skid plate like so you can see in here. Just gives you a better view of the alternator and everything. And then I've already removed some wiring from the alternator. This there's a positive power cable right here that goes on. It's a 10mm nut that I had to remove. I found it was easiest to stick my hand up through this from up under the frame. There are some videos that talk about coming from behind the tire, like closer to the firewall, but because this is a Land Cruiser, that's all sealed up and reinforced in the frame. You cannot get to it. And then the plug for the alternator is on the back side, but I can't get my hand in there. So I'm gonna try and wiggle the alternator loose a little bit and pull it like towards the front of the vehicle to remove it, then see if I can get my hand in there to remove it. So that's where I'm at. And we're going to, let's see, adjust. I'm working on getting this nut loose right here where my finger is. So that has to come out, and then there's one on the top. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna keep going and keep you posted on the progress. Quick tip, if you don't have enough leverage for, say, this bolt right here, which I didn't, just using a regular socket with a 14mm. Took my little 5/8 wrench here, which this is hard to do while holding the camera, and slid it on. Oh my gosh, it was a disaster. Like so. And then I have extra leverage, so I use the wrench to push. That's how I was able to break it loose. Just FYI, if you ever need some extra leverage. With the top and lower bolt loosened on the alternator, you can see that one's about out, and I can move the alternator. If I could get my hand in here, well, it's hard to hold the camera and move it, but anyways, it's wiggling, but the power steering pump is in the way. So I've loosened this bolt here, and then I've removed the bolt right next to it. You can see that opening there, and then there's another bolt, I believe, on the underside that has to come out. So let's see. Well, I can't really see anything, and I bet you can't either. See if I can move this wheel. See where it's at. Oh, there it is. Can you see where my finger is? It's right there, right behind there. So that's got to come out. So I'm going to remove that, and then that should allow me to wiggle the power steering pump, and the alternator will come free. Although I still haven't unplugged it. I'm going to try and wiggle it free and then unplug it from its harness. The alternator's loose. So what I did was I pushed up on the power steering pump from the passenger side, and it allows it to wiggle so you can pull the alternator out. Now it's still not coming out because I've got the flashlight on that, what looks like a 12mm bolt holding a cable in. Don't know what that cable is, but it looks like that has to come out. And then I still have to unplug the electrical connection on the back side that I could not reach. And it's out. So I removed that 12mm bolt, which was really difficult, and then the plug just has a button on it. Where's the plug? Just has a button you press, and then it'll slide right off. Now, one thing to note on the Land Cruiser is you've got all these extra hard lines here. I did pull the alternator down this direction. What I found was easiest was to turn it until the pulley was facing towards the driver's side, and then slowly wiggle it out, being mindful of these hard lines up here. And I had to move the radiator rubber hose out of the way, and then this hose here is also connected to the radiator. And then I put a little bit of pressure on these hard lines, but I think they're okay. And that was how I pulled it down. And I'm gonna do the same thing reverse to lift it back into place, attach the cables. There's a 10mm bolt and a 12mm bolt cable that has to be attached, and then you plug it up. Top and bottom bolt on the alternator, which are here, The longer one goes on top, shorter one on bottom. And then I will put the power steering bolts back in and fasten the power steering bolt on top. Old versus new here. Toyota, Denso. It's all cleaned up. Hopefully I won the lottery with this alternator. I've heard stories where people are having to replace their alternators every 6 months. Hopefully this one's good. I'm gonna slot it back in. Power steering pump tightened, airbox back on. Let's see what we get a read here on the battery. 12.8, that's good, no load, car's not cranked. Let's crank the car and see if the alternator kicks on. I got the engine started. See what reading we get. 14.06, that's good. When I did this test before, replacing the alternator, I was getting like low 12 to high 11 volts. So let me go turn on the AC and the radio and the headlights and see what happens. The bright lights are on, the radio's on, and the AC is running on full blast. So it looks like we're good. This test before replacing the alternator was 11 volts or lower. So it does appear to be charging. So we're gonna drive the vehicle for a little while and see how it works out. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing back together behind me. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Today we swapped out the alternator. In order to do that, we had to remove the air box. We had to loosen 2 bolts on the power steering pump and the 3rd bolt on the top of the power steering pump so we could move it out of the way. 2 bolts on the alternator, disconnect the positive lead and the negative lead, and then unplug a plug on the back of it, and then we slid it out through the bottom on the Land Cruiser. Could not get it through the top, and I had to wiggle it through some hard lines on the front end of the Land Cruiser. And then put everything back together, tested our voltage, everything's good. So appreciate everybody watching. I hope y'all are doing well out there, staying safe, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.